Hi there, this is Anna from Anna Aspnes Designs. Happy Monday. I am back here with a brand new video tutorial and a sort of an overview of the brand new release by Anna Aspnes Designs, and that is the ArtPlay Palette Ochre Collection that was released into the Anna Aspnes Designs store at Scraps last Friday. And you can see on my screen I have a preview of that collection. There are 5 products with an additional bonus product if you purchase all of the products in the series. I'm going to take a look at those products. We're then going to look at some of the layouts created by the Anna Aspnes Designs creative team, and then I want to walk you through a little tutorial for the beginners that are a little bit apprehensive about jumping into this photo artistry or artsy digital scrapbooking using Anna Aspnes Designs. So here's the collection. We have the ArtPlay palette. There is the Artsy layered template, which of course is for Photoshop and Photoshop Elements. The layered PSD file allows you to manipulate all of these little pieces that make up this artsy background individually. It's designed to allow you to add your own background, clip your photos to the frame layers. You could also add one of the FotoBlendz from the Urban Threads FotoBlendz frames into the background there and clip a photo to make room for 4 images in this particular template. And then of course you can go in with the type tool and change the journaling and the title. And then we have the multimedia flower elements, which allow you again to manipulate all of those layers individually or to use these clusters of elements together to add big impact very quickly to your photo artistry and digital scrapbooking pages. The word art is themed along the lines of change, particularly seasonal change, moving into a new chapter. Stories works really well for heritage pages, as you're going to see. So just basically moving forward and an indication of time. The color for this palette was actually inspired by an anthropology ad that I received in my inbox last week, and I was really drawn to the yellows with this subtle pink, and there's some teal in there too, and very much fitting to where I am in my life. My children went back to school today and I am moving into a full season. In Denver, Colorado, we are known to have a very nice Indian summer in September. So I'm sort of moving into fall but still embracing that summer, and I think that this particular palette works well for that. And so this is the bonus set that you get when you purchase all of the products together. You get this additional word art. There's a bonus paper that actually coordinates with one of the Artsy Papers to make a double page spread so that you have a nice cohesive spread, and then an additional multimedia flower here. So this adds to 5 Artsy Papers and 5 multimedia files with additional word art. And of course this word art is designed to be mixed and matched, so you can combine the different types of word art together to create these really interesting title clusters. And then finally, these are the frames. This was the last product that I created in the series, and also the most time consuming, I think, aside from the ArtPlay palette, of course. ArtPlay palettes typically take me about 2 days to create. These little babies here took about 6 hours to make, and they are also delivered in PSD and PNG formats, so you can use these outside of the Photoshop platform. You can essentially rebuild the layers, but they're designed to create a blended image with a frame effect. So I'm going to show you how to use those in this particular video. Let's dive into just a couple of these products. So my favorite, of course, is always the Artsy Papers that come with the ArtPlay palette. And of course, these are pre-made designs onto which you can blend your photos, and you can blend those using custom brushes or AnnaRelease Artsy brushes, or you can simply use the FotoBlendz clipping masks, and that makes it really simple to clip a photo and blend it immediately into the artistry, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So big fan of these papers. I love the little bits of teal in here that I was talking about. Interestingly enough, orange is one of my least favorite colors, yet I seem to have used it in two collections now consecutively. So just an interesting observation about the usage of color. I did ask on my Instagram if people had particular favorites of colors for seasons and if they change year round. So that was a super interesting conversation to have, to hear how people sort of change their color preferences. And then I really like this one here. So the bonus paper that you get actually creates a double page spread with this third paper. So you could also combine that with the template, of course. And then in addition to that, we have the multimedia flowers are another favorite of mine here. I really like those. Again, these are multimedia files, but I do deliver these in PNG format. So you can use the PSD file, but then you can also rebuild these elements as you prefer using these individual layers. So that's the collection. Don't want to spend too much time. If you're interested in learning more about the anatomy of an AnnaRelease and the different components that make up the ArtPlay palette and the word art and the Artsy template, then I'm going to provide a link below to a video that you can watch. Also look at some of the previous videos too, because I do go into a bit more length into looking at these products, but trying to keep these videos to an appropriate length. I would rather spend time looking at the layouts and showing you some deconstructions. So I'm going to now move into my folder of layouts by the Anna Aspnes Designs team, and lots of yellow. So a sea of yellow in the Anna Aspnes Designs gallery at Oscraps. And the first layout I have here is by Mikey, and she has used flowers. And of course, with the multimedia flowers, then of course this is perfect. And they happen to be yellow flowers. And I love how she's framed her blended image with these red elements. You can see this visual triangle, which draws the eye into the flower design. I also really like some of the textures that she's got going on in her photo here, and I'm actually working on a class currently, which is a master class for using ArtPlay palette brushes, and so that's going to provide a lot of information on how to achieve these sorts of effects. Heather too has created a flower page. She has brought in whites, and that's reflected in the white of her background. And then she's also blended that photo into her background simply by clipping that photo to the mask, which I'm going to demonstrate at the end of this video. If you're not interested in looking through all of these pages, then simply forward on to the latter part of the video when I show you how to create a page using some of the products in this collection. Viv's extending the theme to leaves, and of course she lives in the United Kingdom where autumn lands much sooner than it does in Colorado. So I really like how the ArtPlay Palette Ochre supports the turning of the leaves as well. And then we move into some non-photo pages. Donna has used the multimedia flowers as the focal point of her design, and I love how she's used the art stroke and the urban threads from the various products in the collection to anchor each side of the page. This allows the eye to bounce back and forth and sort of land on the focal point. And then Trisha's done the same thing. She's used the multimedia flowers as the focal point of her page, and then placing the various elements around and using the design of the Artsy paper for the placement of these elements. And then we have another sort of an art journaling page here by Bob. She used a sketch that she'd created some time ago, a sort of a self-portrait that she blended into one of the backgrounds using those Urban Threads FotoBlendz frames. And I love how she has used a variety of different frames and different rectangular shapes to create this sort of contrast against the organic lines that exist in the rest of her page. Then we move on to a number of different heritage pages. This one's by Adrienne. She always does a fabulous job of blending her heritage photos with the artistry in these collections using FotoBlendz clipping masks and blending modes and sometimes some custom blending work. Moni has framed her heritage photo, and then she's used the multimedia elements to connect her image to some of the memorabilia that she also has to tell the story of her family and her heritage. And then another small element on the side here. Mikey has combined the ArtPlay Palette Ochre Collection with previous elements in other ArtPlay palettes. So this frame belongs to a different ArtPlay palette, and this is used to frame again some heritage memorabilia. And then a great extraction here from Viv. She's used the tools in Photoshop to remove the background from her photo, and then she's placed this image onto one of those Artsy Papers. And again, you can see those multimedia flowers, much smaller than they are delivered. So again, you have the option with these elements to resize them and recolor them and rotate them as you prefer. Then we move on to some architecture. We have a new design team member at the moment, Nancy Adams, and she had said how well she thought this collection would go with some of her architectural photos. So old and new as well. So here we have a landscape of London, and you can see some of the old architecture and some of the newer architecture in the forefront here, and yet it still goes very well with the warmer colors of this ArtPlay Palette Ochre. And then Nancy here has combined one of her older buildings here in the US with some of the artistry. We keep seeing these multimedia elements, and it's just a great way to add a collection of elements onto a page without having to do too much design work. Viv has added in a dome of an image, so you don't necessarily have to include the entire building. There is some sculpture here by Nancy, and then this was a really lovely page by Margot, who is in Hungary, I believe. And I love how she has contained the sky of her image using the part of the design on the paper. And of course the colors are just delightful, these pastels, and then the warm of the red. Notice how the red again frames the image and draws the eye in. I like how she's also blended this corner element here using brushes to sort of give it a more distressed look. And then the same paper here, but with a different photo. So it's always interesting to see the same paper side by side with different elements. And again, Ulla May here, who's in Sweden, she has blended a photo into the background using those fantastic frames. And then this one is completely different. This one is by Joan, and she has altered the color of the papers in the background from yellow to blue. And this supports the colors of the sky and the water in her city shot. And then a couple of miscellaneous ones here. Laura has created this in Photoshop Elements. I love the color and the light brought in through the use of blending modes. This one is a play on the orange, I think. I see a lot of orange in here, and this is a travel photo, and this is sort of an everyday visit photo. So you can see how flexible this collection is from the use of the supplies by the Anna Aspnes Designs team. I am going to head into Photoshop, and I want to show you how you can quickly and easily create a page in either Photoshop or Elements. And so this is the page that we're going to create. I'm just going to do a quick deconstruct before I actually show you how to create the page. So this is the background foundation, and I have sort of a three-step process when I create a page. I work out the background, which is the foundational step, and then you go ahead and you add in the photo, that's the photo step, and then you have the embellishment. So I added in 2 lots of embellishment, a title, and then the text. I kind of group the text and the embellishment together for this 3-step process. You can see that that was done very quickly in terms of the deconstruct. If I go ahead and minimize that and we just look at the Photoshop workspace here, let's take a look at what's going on here. So in Photoshop and Elements, they are slightly different, but essentially they're the same. This is our workspace. So if you think in terms of tactile art, this is your table. And then on the left-hand side here, you have what's called the Tools panel. And if you can't see that, you can access it by clicking on Window and ensuring you have that Tools option checked. And within this Tools panel, you have your tools. So this is like your paintbrush and your pencil, and you have the ability to move because we're working within a graphics program. Then obviously you're not going to be able to reach your hand in there and be able to move things around. So this move tool allows you to move those elements around your page. And again, because we are working on a flat screen and not in dimensional form, then we have this layers panel on the right hand side. And again, you can access the layers panel from the Windows menu. And this allows us to view the elements that are being added into our page so that we have sort of a dimensional view of what's going on. So this is our layers palette. So as you build up your page, you're essentially going to be adding layers to the page in order to increase complexity. And the way Anna Aspnes Designs works is that I do all the hard work so that you simply just have to drag and drop the elements onto your designs with your photos in order to create these incredibly easy but sophisticated pages. So you're going to create a new canvas. So essentially this is going to be your blank page. So you're going to go to File, New, and you're going to navigate to the dialog box, and it's going to give you the option to enter a width and a height for your canvas. And the important part here is that you want your resolution to be at 300 pixels per inch and the RGB color set to 8-bit. The size is really going to be dependent on your preference. I designed my papers at 12 by 12. This allows them to be resized to 8 by 8 or 6 by 6. And I typically create my pages at 12 by 12 because you always have the option to print at a smaller size. But if you create a page at 6 by 6 and then want to increase that size, then you are going to lose print quality. So I always say create bigger than you perhaps need to, and then you have the option to resize at a later time. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and that's going to create that blank file. You then want to start bringing in some digital elements in order to add to your blank canvas to build up your design. And to do this, you're going to go to File, Open, and then you're going to navigate where you have your digital art saved on your computer. So in this case, I have all of my ArtPlay Palette Ochre supplies together in a single folder, so I have easy access to them. And then I'm simply going to click on the folders and navigate to the various subfolders in order to access those elements. So I'm heading into the ArtPlay Palette Ochre, and I'm going to click on the papery file, and I want to use an Artsy paper. It's much easier to use an Artsy paper than to use a solid paper and create my own design. So I'm going to double click on that paper, and then to move that paper onto the blank canvas, I'm going to ensure that I have this move tool selected from the tools panel. I'm going to click down with that left mouse button, drag, and then release that left mouse button to drop that paper onto my new layout. And again, you can use that same click, drag, release action to place that paper so that the edges are flush up against that new canvas that we created. And then you can go ahead and close out that element by clicking on the X mark in the top right hand corner. So now we have this immediate artsy foundation onto which we can start bringing in our other elements. The next step, of course, is to add the photos. And so to do this, I'm going to use those handy dandy Urban Threads FotoBlendz frames. So let's go ahead and navigate to those. I'm going to go to File, Open, and this time I'm going to navigate to our Urban Threads FotoBlendz frames number 4, and I'm going to navigate to our frame number 2. And I'm using Photoshop, so I'm going to go ahead and use the layered PSD file. I'm going to double click on that to open that into my workspace. And notice all of the layers appear here in the layers panel. So although the image shown to us looks like a single image, there are actually multiple layers that make up this element, and we can see those by using this layers panel option. So to select all of those layers and move them onto our new layout, you want to select one of the layers in the layers panel, hold down the shift button on your keyboard, and then click on the last layer. And this is going to highlight all of those layers so that you can then use that same click, drag, release technique in order to drag those layers onto your new layout. And then again, click, drag, release to reposition those layers on the design. And notice how I am using the area of the Artsy paper with the visual interest to place those elements to create a nice solid focal point. I'm then going to click on the X mark in order to close out that file. Don't want to save it, so I'm going to click no. And then now I am going to go ahead and access a photo, which we're going to clip to this black area here. This is called a FotoBlendz clipping mask. And the idea of one of these masks is to seamlessly blend your photos into the background. You'll notice that the area is densely opaque in the center of the mask, but then it sort of gradiates outwards, and this is what yields the blended effect. So let's go ahead and go to File, Open, and then this time I'm going to navigate to my layouts where I have my photo. This is my little dog, Rocky. It's really hard to get a good photo of him because he's always on the move, but I thought I would use him for this page. And you want to make sure that you have that mask layer selected in your layers panel. So notice how you can click on any of these layers to highlight that layer and select it. And this is going to basically control where you introduce your elements. So if I have this layer selected, then it's going to introduce my photo at the top of the layer stack, which is not necessarily what we want. We want to have our photo directly above that FotoBlendz clipping mask layer so that we can clip that photo directly onto that mask in order to create what's known as a clipping set. So I'm now going to go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and notice now how that photo conforms to the shape of the underlying mask. Now there's a couple of hard edges here, and those are easy to resolve. We simply want to just click on the corner point of the image, and if you don't see that corner point, you want to make sure that you have the Show Transform Controls box checked at the top of your screen in Photoshop. If you're working in Elements, when you click on any of these tools, then your options are going to be located at the bottom of your screen. And you want to make sure you have the bounding box option checked. It's the same thing. And then notice when I get this double-ended diagonal arrow, this allows us then to pull the corners of our photo outwards so that we can extend them beyond the edges of that mask. And then when you're happy with the action, then you can go ahead and you can click on this check mark at the top of your screen in Photoshop, and that's located on the bounding box if you're working in Photoshop Elements. From here, I'm just going to add a few edits to my photo. So to do this, I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Levels. If you're working in Adobe Photoshop Elements, that's Enhance, Adjust Lighting Levels. And then when you click on that option, you're going to get this sort of histogram. And if we pull in this white lever here, you can see this makes our photo brighter, adds more highlights. If we pull in this darker gray lever, this is going to make our shadows darker. So notice now how we're getting some nice contrast in the image. And then you can also play around with this middle lever, which is going to change the midtones. So a super easy way to just alter the appearance and edit that photo. When you're happy with the adjustments, you can go ahead and click OK. And then I'm going to click on the last layer in my layer stack. And this is going to ensure that any new elements that I introduce onto the page are going to be brought on top of all of these other layers. This is where we move into step 3 of this layout. I want to bring in some embellishment. So to do this, I'm going to go to File, Open again, and now I'm going to navigate to my multimedia flowers, and I want to bring in my multimedia flowers number 2 file. Again, I'm going to use the PSD file. And this is the same technique. We're going to select all of the layers in the layers panel by holding down that shift button on the keyboard. And then with that move tool selected, we're going to drag those layers directly onto our canvas and then place those accordingly. And then perhaps we'll bring in another one here. We'll go to File, Open, and then maybe this time we'll bring in the 4th one in the set. So let's go ahead and open this one. And you're going to notice that I'm able to move these files by pulling out the edges. So notice when I hover the cursor over the edge of the file, I get that double-ended arrow, and I'm able to again use that click, drag, release method with my mouse in order to extend the sides open. And then I can also move the images around my workspace by using these tabs at the top of each of the elements. So a lot of flexibility to be able to move things around. And again, this move tool allows us the ability to move those different files and elements around the workspace and within the layout. So I have these layers selected, and then this time I'm going to drag them over and place this on the side here. And this is where the flexibility of some of these files comes in that you don't necessarily have to use these layers in their entirety. So you have a lot of options. You'll see this eye icon next to all of these layers, and this allows you to control the visibility of a layer. So notice when I click on the eye icon to remove it, then the visibility of that layer goes away on your page. So I can go in and I can remove some of these layers to simplify the element cluster. I can also go in and select these layers and move them around. So once you have your page selected, I've just gone ahead and make sure you get all of those layers. So I want to make sure I have all of the multimedia flower layers selected, and then that way I can move the whole thing. So I want to move him over across there a little bit and then turn off some of these layers. So now we're getting some nice balance, and I'm feeling like we have too much stitching. So I'm going to go back and perhaps remove the urban threads, and you'll notice each of these layers is named so that you can find them easily. So let's turn that off. And then you can also move the layers as well. So maybe we bring this over a little bit. We can also rotate layers. So notice how when we pulled the edges out, we've got the corners have got the double-ended diagonal arrow. The edges, like when we're changing the edges or the size and the proportions of our files, they have a horizontal or a vertical double-ended arrow. If I pull out just slightly from any of these corner points, then you'll see you get this double-ended arced arrow. And this allows me then to rotate these elements. And when you're happy with the rotation, you can go ahead and you can accept that transformation or decline it by clicking on this cancel mark. And again, if you're working in Photoshop Elements, that's located at the bottom of the screen. So you can see in just a few small moves, by simply just dragging and dropping these groups of elements onto your Artsy paper, you're very quickly able to create a sophisticated design. I always like to finish my pages with a title, so let's go ahead and navigate to the word art option in this collection. I'm just simply going to bring in a simple text element. So let's go ahead and bring in this up in the air. This seemed to go best with this particular element. Again, click, drag, release in order to bring that in there. And you can see that I have this warning sign that comes up, and that's not typical. I must have somehow changed my settings at the beginning of this element, but typically you won't have to deal with that pop-up box that comes in. That's just something that is to do with the settings in my computer. So I will be going in there and adjusting that after creating this video. So you can see I've placed my title close to the elements and close to my photo, and you can go ahead and you can change the color of that element by going to Edit, Fill. You want to make sure you have the Preserve Transparency box checked here, and I'm going to select white from the contents menu and go ahead and click OK, and this is going to allow me to recolor my title to white. And just to make it stand out a little bit more, I'm going to add a drop shadow layer style. So I'm going to go to Layer, Layer Style, Drop Shadow. And in Photoshop Elements, that's Layer, Layer Style, Style Settings, Drop Shadow. And then you can adjust the angle of your shadow. You can change the opacity. You can change the distance if you want to. So you can see I have more of a sort of a paper style effect there, where I can make it a little bit more blended out. You can also apply a blending mode here to enhance the shadow. So probably a lot more than you need to know as a beginner there, but it gives you some ideas on what you can do with some of the supplies in just a few very easy steps. And if you're interested in learning more about using Anna Aspnes Designs, then head over to AnnaAspnesDesigns.com. If you enter your email on the home page, then you will receive a video with 7 ways to ArtPlay, which will give you more guidance into using Anna Aspnes Designs. And just a heads up that in the next couple of weeks, we are updating that video to provide a lot more information. And of course, if you have any questions about this collection, about me and what I do around here and how I can help you, then please don't hesitate to email me. You can reach me at anna@AnnaAspnesDesigns.com, and I hope you have fun creating with Anna Aspnes Designs. That's it for now, for this week anyway. I will be back in this space again very soon. Take care, and I hope you have fun with the ArtPlay Palette Ochre Collection.